Welcome back. Now, before the break, we spoke to Tshepiso Mohlala, who's the son of Jimmy Mohlala, who was shot down in Mbombela in 2009 after he uncovered corruption related to the Mpumalanga stadium project towards the 2010 World Cup. Mohlala's story is featured among many others in investigative journalist Mandy Wiener's latest book, The Whistleblowers, and Mandy joins us now to talk about this. Mandy, good morning. Thanks for your time.
Morning, Sakina.
So, having written this book on whistleblowers and having listened to their stories, Mandy, what do you make of the news of this latest attempted murder of a former bodyguard of Brian Molefe, who was allegedly shot at 8 times over the weekend?
Sadly, unfortunately, it doesn't take me by surprise, because you hear of stories like Jimmy Mohlala, you hear of stories like Mos Pakwe in Rustenburg, or Tshepiso Zulu, who's a whistleblower in KwaZulu-Natal. And unfortunately, this is the reality and the plight of whistleblowers in South Africa, where they are targeted either in assassinations or otherwise. If it's a corporate whistleblower, many of them speak about being followed or being threatened, but also just in the way that society treats whistleblowers, unfortunately, is we push them to the fringes of society. We treat them as impimpies or pariahs. They wear the scarlet letter W, and we just don't treat them like the valuable commodity that they are. And if we're going to fight corruption, we need to change the way we treat them and the way that we protect them.
And we heard the plea from Deputy Chief Justice Raymond Zondo for law enforcement officials to actually do their jobs in protecting whistleblowers. But let's just talk for a minute about the prevailing legislative framework that governs whistleblowing in South Africa, talking, Mandy, about the Disclosures Act 26 of 2000, which actually encourages South Africans to report wrongdoing, but at what cost? And also, let's talk about the inadequacies of this legislative framework.
So we have got the Public Disclosures Act in South Africa, which came into effect in 2000. It was amended in 2017. And when it came into effect, we were only the 3rd country in the world that actually had a whistleblower law. And now it's considered something of a dinosaur. Any whistleblower you speak to will say that it is inadequate. It is more of a labor law. It doesn't work in practice. And in fact, there was a global research report released last week by the Independent Bar Association and the Global Accountability Project, which looked at various whistleblower laws around the world, and South Africa was lacking. We only met 5 of the 20 markers of where we should be in terms of the law. We came 37th out of 48 countries. There are real problems with the legislation, and that's why it's encouraging to hear Deputy Chief Justice Raymond Zondo saying that they need to look at the legislation, and he is uniquely positioned right now to do something about it. And this is a great opportunity. We've heard many whistleblowers coming before Zondo saying, please, you need to protect us. We need to do more. We have to change the legislation. And Zondo and his team are looking at it. And we really need to do it, because there's no way we can fight corruption if whistleblowers aren't protected, if they aren't encouraged to come forward, if they aren't enticed to come forward. And this is an opportunity for us to do that. They are the greatest weapon against corruption that we have. So we need to ensure that we have more whistleblowers coming forward.
But what we have seen, the reality is, Mandy, that whistleblowers are doing this at great cost to themselves and sometimes pay the ultimate price, as in the case of Jimmy Mohlala, Tshepiso Mohlala, and countless others. But what is practical at the moment, and what is possible in terms of the law in that quest to actually protect those who have come forward to assist the state with information on wrongdoing?
So there's a few different options that we could look at here around how whistleblowers could be protected. If you look at the case of Tshepiso Zulu, he actually had to go to court to force the police minister to protect him. And what he asked for was for law enforcement to protect him as he carried on his own life, living the way that he was accustomed to. But what they did instead was put him into the witness protection unit. And he essentially had to give up his life, his identity. He had to go into the witness protection program. And he only lasted about a week there. It's just not practical for people to give up their entire lives and go into the program if they are whistleblowers. The whistleblower protection program is only for people who are actually witnesses in a criminal trial. So that doesn't necessarily make sense. But we can look perhaps at the US, where they've got something like the False Claims Act, where people are remunerated financially for blowing the whistle so that they can afford their own protection. The alternative is something like in the Netherlands, where they have a whistleblower house, which is a Chapter 9 organization, and then they provide, independent of anybody else or government, they provide mental protection or help, physical protection, financial protection, and that's something that I think would probably work best here. But if you look at the research that was done last week in this global report, they actually point to more of the Baltic countries and how their legislation works. So there is definitely research here, and there is best practice that Zondo and his team and South African legislators could look at to better improve protection for whistleblowers in South Africa.
But at the moment, for those who have already put their lives at risk and their families' lives, those who are contemplating doing this, Mandy, I asked Tshepiso Mohlala whether he would do it, and he said yes. But there may be those who may be a lot more circumspect around whether they choose to blow the whistle. They may be sitting with information. What sort of advice would you give?
So my biggest concern was that I don't want people to be dissuaded from coming forward when they see the examples of people like Jimmy Mohlala, who left his family a legacy of truth, but they haven't got justice. So I do want people to come forward. It's important that people come forward. It's essential, but you need to consider the consequences and make sure that you do it in the correct way, that you are protected, that you get good legal advice, that you make sure you know what you're getting into, because the consequences are so severe. And much of the state capture information we would not know about were it not for whistleblowers. We wouldn't know about the Gupta leaks. We wouldn't know about Trillion. We wouldn't know about PRASA and ESCOM and all of those things if it wasn't for whistleblowers. So we have to encourage people to come forward, but we need to change the way that we treat them in society. We need to change the legislation, and we need to encourage them to come forward. Otherwise, there is no ways that we will fight corruption in this country.
Mandy Wiener, thank you so much for your time. Investigative journalist and author of The Whistleblowers, Mandy Wiener, talking to us there about whistleblowers and, of course, the legislative framework that exists around it currently and what we would perhaps like to see around this moving forward.
Such an important conversation. Really enjoyed listening on to that. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed it as well. Again, back with you bright and early tomorrow morning. I see a lot of events are unfolding at Wits University. I'm seeing something about a shootout and protesting. I'm not sure what's going on, but I just see that it was something that
see, once again, students have been protesting at Wits, and we just haven't perhaps highlighted it sufficiently. But inevitably, it tends to escalate. But you know what? So. The agenda, Desiree, maybe you guys can quickly find out what's happening. It's right up the road here from our studios. So perhaps we'll bring you more throughout the day on that. But thanks so much for being with us. Back with you tomorrow morning.